some of the same forces that would allow that type of thing to occur at Facebook and are allowing that type of thing to occur are also tied in with the same people who feel like we shouldn't educate our kids. So not only are we poisoning young girls with unrealistic beauty standards and bombarding their brains with nonsense, we're also deciding that they don't need to be properly educated. But let's take a look at what the overall strategy has been. We'll look at a couple of different places because you're seeing these things on a systemic level coming from the right wing. So let's begin by taking a look at York, PA, and let's see what some of our youth have to say about this.
These teenagers in York, Pennsylvania are standing up to the latest example of controversy surrounding history and race that is affecting a growing number of America's public schools.
The school board cannot just silence our voices.
Last fall, the all-white school board of the Central York School District unanimously banned a list of educational resources.
And that resource list, which has a lot of bad ideas and some books that I would definitely not want in our district.
And I do not feel it's balanced, and I think it's divisive.
That list includes a children's book about Rosa Parks, Malala Yousafzai's autobiography, CNN's Sesame Street Town Hall on racism.
Racism? What's that?
And much, much more.
This is Hidden Figures. The movie was,
Like from the movie?
Yeah.
This is the kids' version of the book from the movie.
Yeah.
It's frustrating for the students.
This is a board that, after hearing their students' concerns about diversity in the district, hearing my struggles with race, being an Indian American and consistently feeling like I didn't belong, after all those conversations for weeks on end, they still pursued this book ban. I want to learn genuine history. I don't want to learn a whitewashed version. I want to hear all of it. I don't want everyone to be worried about how we feel, because no one was worried about how BIPOC members of the community felt.
The ban caused school librarians to pull books from
Their
shelves,
hearts are in the right place.
and is creating real fear among educators.
I have to now, with this resource ban, think twice about whether or not I should or could use a James Baldwin quote as an opening for my class.
There are teachers looking over their shoulders, wondering if someone's going to be at their door, darkening their door, that you said something or you mentioned something or you used something that you were not supposed to.
The fact that all the banned materials are by or about people of color is just a coincidence, according to the school board president. Concerns were based on the content of the resources, not the author or topic, she said in a statement.
Yeah, okay.
She and the rest of the school board refused to speak on camera. She says it's not a ban. The materials are frozen while the board vets them, but the process is still ongoing.
So, not a ban, but just a chilling attempt to keep teachers from teaching a more accurate form of American history. It's a modern-day book burning, and they don't want to be accountable for it.
After nearly a year.
What?
Ben isn't worried about retirement.
Get
His
out of here,
personalized
Ben.
plan is backed by the team at Fidelity.
This is what happens when you outlaw. You got to deal with ridiculous nonsense on Facebook. It's alright. We're gonna get it.
Some parents in this 82% white district just fine.
That was funny.
I don't want my daughter growing up feeling guilty because she's white.
That sentiment is spreading. At least 27 states have passed or are considering policies strictly defining what students are allowed to learn about race. One expert says the York ban is something new.
Yeah, this seems pretty egregious. I mean, I can see how certain trainings or workshops that some parents take exception to seem really outside of what a history class can be expected to do. But the kind of texts that are being banned here make me feel that there is now just sort of an allergy to anything that mentions race or racism.
This is about more than a book or a movie or even a curriculum, some veteran teachers say. In York, they worry it's a war on their profession.
I am not an enemy of the state.
That's right.
I am here to take care of your babies when they walk into my classroom. And there are some I'm looking up at, but they're still babies.
Unfortunately, if the state is incredibly racist and has vested interest in keeping its people ignorant, that unfortunately does make you an enemy of a deeply corrupt and immoral state. This is a result of right-wingers trying to hide the truth about our country's history from their kids. They're bullying teachers with the express purpose of lying to their kids so that their kids can grow up to be just as racist as them and not question them on their bullshit.
Boy, oh boy, Evan McMorris Santoro joins me now. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's outrageous.
Racist
Thank
white
you for
people
that
said,
piece. It's
"Fuck
really
Rosa
great
Parks."
reporting. This seems really broad. What was the issue with
ass.
CNN Sesame Street Town Hall on race?
Well, Don, that's the question those students in the piece were asking, parents are asking, teachers are asking, and I asked several times while I was in York. But the board refuses to talk about the specific things that they don't like, with things like Elmo asking about race, or a Rosa Parks biography, or the 2017 Academy Award winning Best Documentary feature.
Right-wingers being triggered
People
about
who
Sesame
are watching
Street,
this,
I swear to God.
watch this issue
wrong
nationally,
with
say
these
this
people?
York situation could present a new front in this battle in which anything that centers non-white people, their experiences, their lives, their history, could be suspect. And they say that's a very, very scary thing to think about. Don?
Yeah, let's
They want to
remember, as
enshrine
they say,
white
there's no
supremacy
systemic
in the school
racism.
system.
That was sarcasm.
I mean, they
Evan.
already had it, but
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the reporting. So we've been talking about the hysteria over what students might be learning about race in school having real consequences. A school board in Pennsylvania banning dozens of books and media that talk about
don't
race
worry,
in
it's gonna
America.
get worse,
So
Don.
join me now to discuss CNN political commentators Ashley Allison and Scott Jennings.
Oh,
Good evening
God.
to you. Scott, we
I
love
haven't
having
even
you on to
seen
talk
this
about
part.
these issues
It's gonna be
involving race.
nightmare.
Maybe just for your facial expressions, I don't know. Anyway.
These
I
are
can't wait
valuable
to hear this
conversations.
thing.
I'm glad you have these panels. I mean, you're brave enough to have them, and I think we ought to have them.
Thank you very much. Good, and I agree with you. Ashley, I want to ask you about schools again becoming the
Poor
ideological
system.
battlegrounds, whether it's over masks or boogeymen of critical race theory. How much of this
We'll
is
get back
really
to
about the
boogeymen of
parents instead of
critical race
the
theory in a
kids
minute.
caught in the middle right here?
Well, you know, I was reflecting on this segment, and one of the people said, they're teaching really bad things like slavery and discrimination. Yes, there are terrible things that we should not
But we
have
should have done it.
And yet we need to teach our kids about the history, because if you do not know your history, you are destined to repeat it.
They want
But
to repeat it.
unfortunately, we
That's
now
the
see
point.
parents or adults who are preventing having the full truth being taught. I used to be a school teacher, and I don't actually think it's teachers who don't want to be taught, teach the full truth. It is the administrators that are putting some constraints on them. As a teacher, you have an obligation and a responsibility to teach verbs, nouns, the Revolutionary War, and the Civil War. You cannot pick and choose the facts that you want to teach. You also have an
We've been doing
obligation
that
to teach
since
students critical
she
thinking
and
skills.
everybody
And
else
it is
was born
very
now.
clear that the students in York and all around the country are saying, I smell BS and I'm not buying it, and I want a full, complete story of this country, and I will use my critical thinking skills to discern what is good policy and bad policy.
kids aren't
And
gonna
it's
let
the
you keep 'em
adults
stupid
that are
no
not
matter how much
leading,
money
and
you
we're
pour into the
relying on
project.
young people yet again to save us from poor leadership of adults that should not be in the positions they are in.
So, Scott, listen, we're talking about Sesame Street, Rosa Parks' book. I mean, this isn't controversial stuff. It's enlightening. The right and the Fox propaganda network love to attack safe spaces and cancel culture. I mean, they're all about pushing back against censorship. Isn't this being, this school board being hypocritical here? Isn't this about
No, of
censoring
course
and
not. They're-
canceling books?
Blah, 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 traditional values.
Well, I read the list of materials that was on the banned list, and I found a lot of variance there. I mean, the Sesame Street episode, the biography about Rosa Parks, seems to be far different kind of material than the book White Fragility, which I can't even begin to imagine why that's in a public school. So there's some stuff on there that seems perfectly reasonable to have in a school, and some stuff that I'm not necessarily a
Anything
fan
that
of being
gets
part
too
of a
much
school
deeper
curriculum,
than what
nor
they're
would I think most
acceptable with
parents would
definitely
be.
has to go.
If they are concerned about their kids being sent into a school and being told, because you were born white in America, you're inherently rotten and racist.
Why is white fragility there? Literally because of this type of shit. Their parents are so fragile that they can't stand them learning anything that gets outside of their little ass craptown bubble. This is why people in this country are so goddamn stupid. Because of groups like the Daughters of the Confederacy and their newer offshoots, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Racist, and we're going to fix it. So it strikes me that there is a middle ground here. And the middle ground is, number one, banning materials is not a good idea. I read in the CNN story that we just posted a couple of hours ago that not only were they taken out of the curriculum, but they were pulled off the library shelves. It strikes me that all materials could live in a library, and if students wanted to access materials and use them for book reports and things, that should be perfectly fine. It also strikes me that there's a huge difference between, some of the things that were banned and others that were banned that maybe ought to be re-reviewed. So I'm sympathetic to parents who are worried about what their kids are learning. I'm also sympathetic to the students who are rightly have their radar, their antenna up when they hear that things are being taken out of libraries.
But only certain books.
Having something available in a library doesn't mean it has to be in the curriculum, but it also means that students can get access to it if they want it. So perhaps there's a way forward here that satisfies most people's concerns.
Look, Ashley, I mean,
black people
go
faces
on
this side.
They
heard the
no
dog
teacher
whistle.
is teaching someone just because they are white that they are bad. They are teaching history, and we cannot omit who were perpetrators and enabled slavery and some of the oppressive policies that we have. It is history. I never said one person was better than another person, but we cannot run away from the facts. And so it is a weak argument to just say, like, because I read something that makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm going to assume that the teacher is saying that my student is bad or that I am bad. No, it's the facts. And if you don't like the facts, then let's not ever repeat an oppressive policy like slavery or discrimination or voter suppression or not giving a woman a right to choose. But that's not what, that's not the argument. They just want to ban all of history because they're afraid of having tough conversations.
Well, look, I have to say, I'm a big fan of James Baldwin, and The Fire Next Time was controversial when it was written, and now it is part of curriculums all across the country, and people laud the work. Listen, we'll continue this conversation. Thank you. I got to go.
So let's keep in mind what the sister said towards the end, and then let's pivot over to Texas and take a little more in-depth look, because Texas is holding our most extreme examples of where this type of policy goes. What she was saying about making sure that we talk about who the perpetrators and who the victims of these crimes were, that's going to come back up in a minute. But let's take a look in Colleyville. A Texas high school principal was suspended on Monday. Sorry, this is towards the end of August, so not that long ago. These are all happening over the last month and a half. Following claims that he was teaching critical race theory to students, Principal James Whitfield was placed on paid administrative leave. Whitfield said he was put on leave indefinitely because the superintendent has determined that doing so is in the best interest of the district. The suspension comes a week after the principal addressed parents' concerns at a school board meeting that he was teaching critical race theory. Parents accused Whitman by name at the July 26 assembly, which violates board meeting rules, and the principal responded on social media days later. The last time I wasn't here, someone was allowed to speak my name in public against the rules. And I think that's what really disparaged my name. I mean, you're also black. Come on, you know what these parents are all about. That group of people got the attention, so the students, the community, they said, let's show up and let's let our voice be heard. So, similar to the board meetings with angry right-wingers showing up yelling, we, on Monday, we'll cover how they basically tried to kidnap a school board last week. I should have pulled that for today, but we'll get to it. I'm not the CRT boogeyman. We heard that reference a minute ago. I'm the first African American to assume the role of principal at my current school in its 25-year history. I'm keenly aware of how much fear this strikes in the heart of a small minority who would much rather things go back to the way they used to be. Whitfield described his suspension as a personal attack and said the district had offered little assistance. I've done nothing wrong by anyone. Instead of issuing their support of me, they came after me. Because it's easier and it fits the narrative of these people to figuratively lynch a black principal rather than to be honest with their kids. These are the people we're dealing with. Understand who your political enemies are. And let's take a look at one last part. We want to look at South Lake, Texas, because that's the one that's been getting the most press. A week or so ago, South Lake disciplined a teacher. But we'll dig into all of that too. The Carroll Independent School District in South Lake, Texas is cracking down on books teachers keep in their classroom libraries. Very similar to what we just saw in New York. So when people say that, oh, this is just happening in places, no, this is systemic. Don't buy that. Mandatory training on new district-wide rules governing books and instructions for getting rid of any that don't meet new content standards. The rubric for determining which books should be removed from Carroll classroom libraries asks teachers to grade books based on whether they provide multiple perspectives and to discard those that present singular dominant narratives in such a way that it may be considered offensive. We've seen the danger of this whole both sides narrative. How are you going to both sides slavery? How are you going to both sides genocides? But this is the direction that this trends in. The guidelines are based in part on a new Texas law. Let's keep in mind they're putting these things on the books that prohibits schools from teaching lessons that might make students feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress because of their race. They don't want white people to feel guilty for learning about slavery. The move comes just days after the Carroll School Board reprimanded a 4th grade teacher who had kept a copy of This Book is Anti-Racist by Tiffany Jewell in her classroom library, following complaints from a mother who said the book violated her family's morals and faith. Keep in mind, the religious right has always mixed racism in with their religion. Racism is so deeply set in the cracks in the foundation of this country that it is literally considered part of their religion by large sects in this country. 5 Carroll teachers spoke to a reporter about the new book rules on the condition of anonymity, worried that they would be punished for discussing their concerns publicly. They said that the guidelines are too vague and that they are afraid of being punished by the school board because of a parent's complaint. 4 said they were thinking of leaving the district, one of the top-ranked school systems in Texas. They literally have teachers bullied and running scared. These are people who dedicate their lives and are underpaid to watch and teach your snotty-ass kids, and you want to bully them just for trying to do their jobs well. But how can this be a surprise from a bunch of authoritarians? One teacher said, "You can't even read any of the books on my shelves. How am I supposed to know what 44 sets of parents find offensive? We've been told the parents are our clients. We have to do what they want, and this is what they want." These people are using their social power in these areas and around this country to do the same thing in public schools that they've already done in private schools, to turn education into a commodity in which the customers get to make egregious demands and the customer is already right, when the customer is not always right in general, especially not in education. If these parents knew enough to educate their own students, they wouldn't be so goddamn stupid themselves. An elementary school teacher said she would need to get rid of Separate is Never Equal, a picture book by Duncan, don't get me started to mispronounce it, about a Mexican-American family's fight to end segregation in California in the 1940s. Another said she was setting aside A Good Kind of Trouble by Lisa Moore Remy because the girl at the center of the story gets involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. She said she no longer feels safe keeping a copy of The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas in part because it depicts radicalized reactions to a police shooting or any books by Nobel Prize winning author Toni Morrison. We can see the chilling effect has ripple effects. One of the questions we're supposed to ask is, does the writer have a neutral stance on the topic? Well, if you're Toni Morrison, how can you have a neutral stance towards racism? Now history is being depicted through this rose-colored lens, and all of this creating a chilling effect that's going to hurt our students. That same rose-colored lens is why so many of the racist twat waffles you know say that the Civil War is all about states' rights, and it had nothing to do with slavery because we teach through a racist lens in this country. In Franklin, Tennessee, a group called Moms for Liberty, we can simply think of them as a modern Daughters of the Confederacy. If we need to go over that history at some point, we can. Has been trying to get an elementary school to ban dozens of books that it says are too divisive for children. The list includes Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington, and the story of Ruby Bridges, about the 6-year-old black girl who integrated a Louisiana public school in 1960. We already talked about York. You all just saw what they're doing there. But let's take a look at what the next step is as far as South Lake. Because when you start telling people that they have to teach both sides of an issue that good and moral people know does not have two sides that are valid enough for us to be speaking from their perspective, it leads down incredibly racist and incredibly conservative directions. Let's go ahead and let Lester have at it, and then we'll dig a little deeper into the article.
In a Texas school district at the center of a firestorm over diversity and inclusion efforts. Now, secretly recorded comments from a top administrator about books on the Holocaust are sparking new outrage. Antonia Hilton takes us back to South Lake.
Wes Frierson, a parent of 2 daughters in South Lake, is uncertain about his kids' education.
With some of the local politics right now, I'm not sure that teachers feel supported.
The district already in the spotlight after parents clashed over its diversity plan, now facing new pushback over which books are allowed in their libraries, with some teachers placing...
Hold on, pause. I know this is a total side note, but I gotta see that side of that wall again. That was kind of awesome.
Now facing new pushback over...
That's by far the best thing about this entire high school. I don't even know what that is, but it's awesome. But we'll move on.
Which books are allowed in their libraries, with some teachers placing caution tape over bookshelves, calling the move censorship. It all started when a 4th grade teacher was reprimanded after a parent complained about her having a book about anti-racism.
I couldn't believe it. She's the kind of teacher that we would hope the district would be trying to attract.
The district sent educators new guidance to vet all books, instructing them to not allow singular perspectives that could be considered offensive. This coming after Texas passed a law banning the teaching of concepts that could make individuals feel guilt or anguish due to their race. NBC News obtained exclusive, secretly recorded audio of a school training.
That's why
we are in
the classroom.
The middle of a political mess.
The director of curriculum, Gina Petty, offers an example for teachers. Balance books about the Holocaust with an opposing view.
Make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, that you have one that has opposing, that has other...
How do you oppose the Holocaust? Gina Petty did not respond to messages requesting comment. I met with 2 concerned teachers in South Lake. We obscured their identities because they feared speaking out could cost them their jobs.
So you look like a Karen that would have that type of opinion.
When I heard these words, we felt this was necessary because we felt like no one was going to listen until a teacher spoke up.
And it's not just in South Lake. Across the country, educators are facing new policies restricting how they can educate students about race, from Tennessee to Pennsylvania. South Lake School District told NBC News they were helping teachers comply with Texas law, and the district has not and will not mandate books be removed.
The district says that they have not told teachers to ban books, to completely shut down libraries. What are you seeing?
That's a lie. It is a flat-out lie. Like, how could you even make that statement.
What do you think is at stake here?
In books, children see what the world can be, and to have that taken away because we're afraid of a few parents getting upset about a word or two or an idea that they've imagined is in a book is unthinkable.
Wes Frierson says his daughters see what's happening.
Unfortunately, for kids under the age of mine, I think the last, as they become aware of the world, I think they just see the world as very highly politicized.
But parents hope that politics find a way out of public schools. Antonia Hilton, NBC News, South Lake.
And you can hear more of our reporting on South Lake in our NBC News podcast. All episodes are now streaming.
All right. So,
For holiday shoppers,
no. So, the top administrator with the Carroll Independent School District in South Lake advised teachers last week that if they have a book about the Holocaust in their classroom, they should offer students access to a book from an opposing perspective. We just saw Gina Petty, Karen number 1 for this particular situation. She made the comment on Friday afternoon during a training session. This was 4 days after the teacher that we already talked about was reprimanded for having the anti-racism book. She talks about the bill. Let's actually listen to the audio here for a minute so we can hear what was really said. Assuming it loads. Come on. Uh-oh. Alright, it just might not have stopped yet. Let's see. Come on.
We are in the middle of a political mess. And you are in the middle of a political mess. And so we just have to do the best that we can. And so we're going to go and we're going to do, you're going to do what you do best, and that's to teach kids.
I think we're all just really terrified.
I think you are terrified. And I wish I could take that away. I do. I can't. I can't do that. You are professionals. We hired you as professionals. We trust you with our children. So
Translation, do what the hell we say.
if you think the book is okay, then let's go with it. And whatever happens, we will fight it together. We will.
There's a lot of districts that are in the exact same spot we're in. And no one knows how to navigate these waters. I mean, no one.
Could stand up and have some guts. Just a little bit.
As you go through, just try to remember the concepts of 3979 and make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, that you have one that has opposing, that has other.
How do you oppose the Holocaust?
Believe me, that's come up.
So number the stars,
No,
which is
no.
Rabble, rabble, rabble after that. Like, they aren't being subtle. Folks, they are not being subtle at all. We need to make sure we understand exactly what we're getting into. Because, well, we heard the lady talk about number the stars, or tell the story of the Holocaust from the perspective of victims. What are these people? Things are obviously bad when school districts are considering Holocaust denial as a matter of course because of some law that right-wingers put in place. How do you both sides the Holocaust? Clay Robeson, a spokesman for the Texas State Teachers Association, said there's nothing in the new Texas law explicitly dealing with classroom libraries. Robeson said book guidelines at Carroll are an overreaction and a misinterpretation of the law. 3 other Texas education policy experts agreed. We find it reprehensible for an educator to require a Holocaust denier to get equal treatment with the facts of history. That's absurd. It's worse than absurd, and this law does not require it. Keep in mind that these are the people that we're fighting with. The people that would teach our children that there are perfectly good people on both sides of the Holocaust. That's what we're dealing with here. So make sure to keep an eye on this, and we'll circle back to cover it a little bit more, because we want to talk about the people breaking into the school boards. These people are all over the place trying to ruin your educational system through money, influence, and, if necessary, violence.